if you're a querying writer, one of the things that can be a bit of a nightmare is the query letter itself, which is kind of funny really, because it's only a short email, but it's really important. It's the first impression you make with an agent, and it's the first taste they get of your writing. So quite often authors, myself included, tend to agonize over the query letter and do multiple versions and spend a lot of time on it, which is good, but sometimes it can be really hard to know when it's done. So I'm going to give you 5 tips today to help you know if your query letter's done. Hello, thank you for clicking on the link. My name's Simeon and this is my nameless channel. It's kind of a book / film / writing / any other stuff I want to discuss kind of a channel. So if you're a confused author and you're in the query trenches and you clicked on this link, grab a coffee, sit back and relax. I will give you my tips and hopefully by the end of this video you will feel much more confident with your query letter, or you will know what you need to do to make it better. So first I'll give you a really quick update on my writing just in case you're interested. I'm revising my second novel now. It's kind of a contemporary fantasy novel and I've just passed the 250 page mark, so I'm really excited about that and coming up to the final 100 pages, which is a really nice milestone to hit. I'm also reading this book at the moment, Legends and Lattes, which I am really enjoying. It's a great book and I cannot wait to finish it and put a review up on this channel, but that's what I'm up to. So let's get into the query letter tips. Tip number 1 sounds so obvious, but it tripped me up and I've seen it trip a lot of people up, and that is just to make sure your query letter is the right length. Right length, I hear you say? Well, I've seen multiple query letters at different lengths, and I've seen some that were 2 pages long and got an agent, and how do I know what the right length is? Is there even a right length? And I say, well, no, there isn't really, but there are guidelines.
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
And guidelines are kind of all you're going to get with this. There is no 100% works like a charm all the time guaranteed with query letters, but I would say as much as possible follow the guidelines. So yes, you will be able to find examples of people who didn't do this and still got an agent, but I would stick to this, okay? So what I was told and what agents have since told me and multiple people have confirmed is that you want your query email letter to be short, 300 words to 350 words, maybe 450 is on the long end. You definitely want it less than a page of A4 in a 12-point font. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is that agents are busy, they get hundreds of emails, so they don't really want overly long query letters that might not be the best first impression you could make. And the second is, as soon as an agent starts reading your query letter, they're kind of evaluating what your writing's like, because that's just what they're trained to do. That is their job. So being concise and to the point is a good way to make a good first impression. So if you can convey all the relevant information about your book and yourself in 350 words and make it interesting, that already shows that you are a highly competent writer and someone an agent might be interested in. Tip 2 is on personalisation. This is a slightly divided topic. I've met agented authors who didn't feel personalisation was necessary and sent no personalised queries, and I met other authors who swear by it. So for me personally, I feel if there's good reason you queried that agent, not a tenuous link, but if you love an author they represent or something they worked on or something you saw on their manuscript wish list, then yeah, by all means put that in the first paragraph. Even with a full request, I talked to an agent about the kind of tea they liked because they'd mentioned it on their manuscript wish list that they were a tea aficionado, and I talked to my actual agent about Magic the Gathering because that's something we both enjoy. So it's a good idea to try and make a connection, and if you can't make a connection over books, you might be able to make a connection about something else. Just make sure it's something that's publicly available on their manuscript wish list and you've not kind of combed through their Twitter to find their dog's name or something that could be a little bit jarring. I'm sure you wouldn't do that if you're watching this, but I felt I should say that just for clarity's sake. Tip number 3, comps. This is something that can drive people absolutely spare, myself included. It is really important to include comps in your query letter. That's because an agent, when they take your book out on submission, is going to need some comps to pitch to publishers, and a publisher, if they're interested in your book, is going to look at similar books and see what they sold, and if they wanted to make you an offer, that's where they might generate some data to kind of work out, well, how much could we offer on this book, how much would we make on it if it went well, how much would we lose, etc. So that all comes from your comps to start with, so it's really important you've done your legwork and research. The reason I had trouble, and the reason a lot of people have trouble, is because I couldn't find anything exactly like my book. And I'm not saying I'm a literary genius who wrote like Ulysses or something. I'm just saying my book was kind of weird and out there, and I couldn't find anything that was really a match for it. So what you want to do in that case is comp to aspects of your novel. So you might find something with a similar tone to your novel, which I could find, and then you might want to find something with a similar main character or a similar plot. And if that's the case, you can put that in your query letter. So, you know, the rambunctious heroine of X meets the melancholy tone of Y. And that way, that gives the agent a very clear idea. Comps, in this case, is different to pitching comps. When you're pitching in a Twitter pitch contest, you can use pretty much anything. You can use films, TV shows, new, old, it doesn't matter. But when you're pitching to agents, you want to be choosing a reasonably successful book, but not maybe the most successful book that year, and something that came out recently, sort of in the last 5 years, which does make it harder, but that's going to make the agent's job easier. If you really can't do that, I do have a workaround, because I found I couldn't do that. Use the aspects of your comps near the top, and then later near the bottom of your query letter, maybe in the 3rd paragraph, say something like, it would sit beside, and then list some other books that it would sit beside on a bookshelf. So you're not saying it's necessarily the same as those books, but you're just imagining, okay, if I went into a bookstore, this is where my book would be, this is where it would be found, and that's where you could put your more recently released books. And that, again, that's just helping the agent do their job. If you can't figure out where your book might sit in a bookstore, then an agent might also have trouble with that, and a publisher might also have trouble with that, and then you're less likely to get an offer for your book. Tip number 4 is to include some information about yourself. And I've seen lovely things where people have been quite jokey about themselves and sort of included doing their free time, and that's great because you're giving the agent an idea of who you are and allowing a bit of a connection there. But I would say, if you're talking about yourself, try and relate it back to the book if you can. Try and give the agent an idea of why you were the right person to write this book. So, for example, I could have talked about all my Magic the Gathering and kind of all the things we had in common, Jared and I, but I also mentioned that I'd done theology at university because my book had a lot of theology and philosophy in it. So that added some relevance. And it made sense. It wasn't just like one day I decided to write a book about all this stuff. It made sense to me because of my background. And tip number 5, just make sure all the essential info is there. So you've got your book's word count, your age range, where it would sit in a bookstore. You've got a link to your author website. And if you don't have one, I really would get one if you're querying. It just looks professional. And when I say website, I really don't mean it has to be anything time intensive. It's just something that makes you look professional. So it could just be a page with a photo and a bit about you, then a page about your book, and then how to contact you. And that's all it could be. Even if you just did a website with your photo, the bit about you, and more coming soon at the bottom, that is still going to look much better to an agent. It just looks good that you have a web presence and you're thinking professionally, because after all, most professional authors have a website. So that is something you will need at some point. So why not get it now and start off on the best possible footing? Right, I hope that's been helpful. That was hot. I do have a bonus tip for you. So thank you for sticking with me this far. If you are really serious about improving your query letter, I will say for most authors it is a process of refinement. It gets better and better over weeks and months. And there is a fantastic resource online that's free that you can use to see how other authors have gone through that process. So Gabby Burton, who's an author on Twitter who was querying about the same time I was, put together this resource on her website where different authors have shared their query letter from the earliest version to the version that got them their agent. So you can go through and see what the difference was. And it makes for really interesting reading. It's really informative. And as a bonus, Gabby's put her query letter on there, and it's honestly one of the best query letters I've read. The other thing I will say is that a query letter is very personal to you. You should never just take someone else's and change a few things and call it your own, because it just won't ring true. That said, you can absolutely use the structure of someone else's to create a good query letter for yourself. So it's very valuable being able to look at other people's query letters. Okay, that's better. That's cooled down now. So thank you for watching. I'm going to do some more review videos soon, but I thought I would do an actual writing video. Please do like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow the channel. I've already failed on my weekly YouTube goals video, but I am working on it. Hopefully the lighting was a bit better this week. I don't know. You can let me know in the comments what you thought. Let me know any query letter tips or questions you have, and I will make sure to get back to you. And thank you for watching, and goodbye.